Hey there, my name's Daniel, and I run a lot of Spartan races, and you're watching this video because you either signed up for a Spartan race or thinking about signing up for a Spartan race, and you want to know how to get prepared for it. Just a little bit about me. I've run a total of 13 Spartan races, running all the distances from the 3-mile like sprint and stadion distances all the way to the 30-mile ultra distances. So I've done everything in between, taken a lot of people through their first Spartan races as they've run them with me. So I think I have a pretty good idea. So I wanted to talk about a few of the things that you'll want to do getting prepared for your first Spartan race, if it's intimidating or scary, and just talk you through about why you want to do these things and how to get prepared for them. So the three things that you generally want to keep in mind are the gear and equipment that you want to bring. So things like food and physical items that you like to bring to Spartan races. Training, so how you're going to prepare physically and mentally for some of the obstacles and running that you're going to encounter on it. And the night before, so the stuff you want to be doing the day before the race to make sure you're prepared for it. The first thing we're going to talk about is some of the equipment here. So the first thing and the most important thing on preparing for Spartan races are the shoes that you're going to wear. You're going to want to buy trail shoes, okay? So trail shoes pretty much are like normal shoes. These are the first trail shoes I ever ran with. They're actually a loaner from a friend. And as you can see on the bottom, there are just these spikes here that help you grip the dirt and mud that you're going to be running through. So there's a lot of mud on these races. And if you wear something that's pretty bald, or even just like new shoes that are made just for like walking around the road, you can expect to slip a lot. These spikes help you grip it a lot easier, and these are generally made to be running in some of the trails. If you want to be cheap, you can just buy cleats at any kind of sports store, but if you want to actually get some high dollar shoes, then you can go to some of the specific brands. These are Innovates, which is spelled I-N-O-V, and then the number 8. That's a pretty popular brand as far as shoes. I think it's probably the most popular brand I've seen around. The only other brand that I think contends with them slightly are what I use, which are Ultras. So this is actually my first pair of trail shoes. As you can see, they still have the spikes. They have this hard rubber on the bottom, which are stone guards. So if you step on a really sharp stone, it's not gonna like punch through and you're not gonna feel it too bad. And these are the Ultra Kings, if you're actually concerned about what type of Ultra this is. So the reason I don't run in these anymore is, as you can see, they have a really low ankle. And for me, I'm someone who I was not used to trail running, and so I didn't have very strong ankles. I came in as a swimmer, so I don't have very strong ankles. So as you can see, like right here, there's no support, so it's very easy to roll and get injured. You want to be very conscientious of that. So if you are concerned about weak ankles and you still want to buy like nicer shoes, the ones that I number one recommend are Ultra Lone Peaks. As you can see, this entire bit of the shoe does not need to be here. This is solely to protect your ankle. These are heavier than normal shoes. That's the downside. I think mostly these are made for walking, but you can run in them. And honestly, I just ran in them this last weekend, and it was the best race experience I've had with any pair of shoes. They supported me incredibly well. I honestly did not notice the extra weight. They're not that much heavier than real shoes, even though they look like they're a lot bulkier. Really important to get shoes. The number one thing is you want to make sure you're looking for trail shoes in general. They don't have to be nice, especially if this is your first race. Like I said, my first pair were these, and they were just a loaner from a friend. So they were not ones that I actually bought myself, but you do not want to show up in just tennis shoes or you're going to have a bad race. All right. The next thing that I think a lot of people don't think about until their second race are wearing compression shorts. So these are shorts that are made to be pretty tight around your legs, and they're going to help you for a few different reasons. I'm going to show you some of the shorts that I run in. So these are basic shorts that I have. They're just Under Armour ones. I bought them at Dick's. They're pretty cheap, and these are what I'll just kind of run in general. Or if I'm running one of the open heats and I'm not doing it competitively, I'll just wear compression shorts. The good thing about these is, first of all, they wrap around you, so you're not going to have like baggy clothes that are going to be jumping around a lot. So you just kind of replace your underwear with these compression shorts. They're super light, so they're not going to be weighing you down. And the big thing is they help prevent chafing. If you're not used to running a lot and then you all of a sudden run like 5 miles, you're going to be chafing really, really badly, and that's going to hurt. And I never actually bought these till after the first time I chafed. I think I ran 10 miles that day, and I was chafing so bad. One of the first things I did is I drove to Dick's and bought these. And I have not really had any chafing experience since, unless I run like 30 miles. Slightly better You can also get leggings. These are full-on leggings. So as you see, they would come all the way down to my ankle. The good news about these compared to the normal shorts is they also protect your knees, which on a couple of the obstacles is really helpful. Particularly there's an obstacle called Olympus where you either put your foot or your knee on the wall. And I like leggings because I can just put my knee on the wall and not worry about roughing it up. And also on the barbed wire crawls, it makes it a lot easier. Again, I don't think they weigh you down that much. And these even have a pouch. They call this a runner's pocket for you to put nutritional stuff, which we'll talk about in a second. But yeah, so leggings are super important. And also guys, this is another slight concern that obviously girls won't have a problem with. One of the big things these compression shorts do is when you're going over obstacles, like 6-foot walls or something like that, you're doing a lot of stuff where you're resting your groin right on top of the wall. And sometimes if you land on it wrong, it can really crush your junk. This actually helps like kind of cradle it out of the way. So again, another reason for guys, I think compression shorts are just a must. Girls in general, I think usually wear leggings and stuff like that, but guys, I don't think utilize compression shorts enough, and it can make some of the obstacles actually painful to go over when they shouldn't be, just because you accidentally land on it wrong. Moving on, we have a few things that are optional, but yeah, this is my camel pack that I wear for my races. You can see it's pretty muddy. I only use these for Spartan races, but it just has a bladder that you can fill with water, and this slides right into the bag like so. But yeah, you can just kind of buckle it down up top and you just wear it as a backpack. Pretty big deal. You don't need it for a race because they do have water stations usually about every single mile. I've never seen a water station space more than like 1.5 miles at a Spartan before. So they're pretty good about keeping you hydrated. If it's your first time, I would recommend just stopping at every single water station so that you never get yourself caught off guard. But if staying hydrated is another concern for you, I highly recommend bringing this. I can't tell you how many times I've been running races and I pass people and they ask me to stop so they can take a sip from my water pack just because they don't have these. So you can usually get these as backpack form, or you can also get just bottles that you carry around. My friend has just a vest that comes down and it has bottles here and here. And you can also get like fanny pack type things where bottles are just cinched around your waist. So I think this is probably the next thing you want to get if you're still unsure about the kind of stuff you want. Moving on, the next big thing is nutrition. There are two big things you want to be concerned about, which is your sugar and protein levels while you're running in these races. If you're concerned that you're going to be getting hungry, you're not going to be able to last the whole race. And also, especially if you're doing something like a super or a beast. If you're doing a super or any of the longer distances, I think you definitely should have at least some kind of nutrition. The major nutrition that I always keep with me are these goo gels. As you can see right here, like they come in a bunch of flavors. This is salted watermelon right here. But yeah, it has like a few amino acids, it has some salts in there, caffeine, and it's just supposed to give you a big energy boost. And it's basically just sugar paste. It's kind of sticky. You want to take this with water, which means you should wait for a water station, or you definitely want to have one of the water packs. This is really good for if you're crashing and you just need some sugar to keep yourself going up, especially if you're like hypoglycemic or something like that. These are the number one thing. They recommend you take these about you can even see on the back, every 45 minutes. Typically what I do is I run the first mile and then I'll take my first one, and that's like my energy boost for the race. And then if I just feel super low on energy, I'll take another. So I usually wind up taking like one more during a super, somewhere around like the 4 or 5 mile mark. You can also take energy blocks, which I don't ever take these, which is why I don't have them, but they're like these Gatorade blocks, and Goo also makes some blocks, and they're just made to have like 2 of them before the race. They're supposed to help get your energy levels up. And then the last thing, just for pure energy fuel, I think is this is a powder called Tailwind. Basically that you just mix this with water. So a lot of the times, if I am gonna bring a camel pack, I will mix in Tailwind with it. I think the last time I used Tailwind was when I ran my Ultra, my 30-mile one. And let me tell you, it was a lifesaver out there, because it definitely, anytime I was just feeling like crashing a little bit, I can just, slip on my nozzle that's on my left shoulder, and I just get a little bit of an energy boost. Helps keep me hydrated, keep me going. So yeah, you can't just like bring this, unfortunately, if you don't have like a camel pack or some kind of water pack, because it's kind of hard to mix like powder and keep it from mixing with anything while you're out on the course. So yeah, Tailwind is another super good option, especially if you're bringing a camel pack already. And the last thing is just, in general, you should bring like protein or granola bars, because if you're running a race long enough, protein issues start to be a concern. I think the general rule of thumb is somewhere around 2 to 3 hours into a race, you want to start thinking about protein for fuel, not just sugars. If you're running a beast, or an ultra, you definitely want to be bringing at least like some kind of protein granola bar, stuff like that. Or even if you're doing a super and you just think you're not going to run it that fast, that's all the stuff for like nutrition. You can also, if you find similar products like that, it's not going to hurt to try those out. Those are just the brands and specific products that I think are definitely worth your time and money. The next thing I have is some kind of light source. So there are some races in Spartan that are called headlamp races, which are if you're starting in a late enough heat and the race goes long enough, you have to have a headlamp on you after a certain point of the race, because as it gets dark, it's just a liability concern for them. You have to have some kind of light source if you're out there and you're running when it starts. Usually this becomes a concern with beasts and ultras. Once you do a beast and you're starting late enough in the day, then there's a chance that you aren't going to finish before nightfall. And at that point, you have to have a light source that they will pull you off the course. So in general, it's good just to have one on you just in case, especially if you think you're going to be running a slow race. So this is actually what I have. This is a general lamp. So some people have headlamps that you just put on your head. Those are really good, and those are what I recommend if you know you're going to be running alone. You can also get flashlights. Those are perfectly fine. I like this because as you can see, it puts light out in all directions. So this is really nice when you're running with people because it lights up everything for everyone, and everyone's usually pretty thankful. Like, yeah, it provides enough light in all directions. The only problem is it is a lot heavier than a headlamp, but if it's your first time, a headlamp, an actual one with a head strap, I think is probably your best bet. But yeah, if you don't even want to invest in that, you just have flashlights around, you can just have a flashlight. Next thing, this is kind of a big one for me because as I said, I have notoriously weak ankles, but you may want to get some kind of ankle support. And this just helps make sure I'm not going to roll it. Because again, if you roll the ankle, there's a chance you might not finish the race. I have had to quit one Spartan before because I rolled my ankle, and that actually caused me to miss the race the next day as well because I rolled it so bad. You don't want to have to pull out and you injure yourself. But again, like this is only a concern if you have weak ankles, stuff like that. The last kind of thing as far as gear is concerned is socks. These are my specific race socks. I wear them for races, and just you want to make sure you have a sock that has slightly higher. I would honestly recommend bass player socks, like all the way up your calf. And the big thing about this is you don't want gravel and stuff getting loose and getting into your sock. Because once it gets in there, it's going to start rubbing you the wrong way as you're running, and you will have to stop, pull your shoe off, pull your sock off, and clear it out because the pain will just start being too much. So having socks with just a higher ankle are really useful, and I highly recommend them. Yeah, so that's it as far as all the recommended items. And now we're going to move on to actual training. So I'm going to assume that if you're watching this that you don't have a lot of experience in a lot of the exercises. I'm going to kind of just go through a lot of the types of obstacles. So the number one thing to prepare for is the running. The key word in Spartan race is the race portion, and that is because it is primarily a foot race. Okay, you're gonna be doing a lot of running. You'll be doing mostly running. For a 4-mile race that I just ran, there were 21 obstacles. If you're keeping track of that, you still have to run 1/5 of a mile between every single obstacle pretty much. When you add that all up, it's a good bit of running. When I did my ultra, remember it was 30 miles total, even though there were like 70 obstacles at my ultra. It's still a lot of running in between, so you have to make sure you're pretty good with the running. One of the biggest things is doing a Couch to 5K program. You can Google any of these online, so I'm not going to go through them in particular, but they're usually about like 8-week programs. And that'll help you run to like a 5K, which I think honestly, if you can run 3 miles without stopping, you are totally good for running one of these Spartan races, up to at least a super. You probably want to be able to run more than that if you're trying to do something like a beast or something like that, but for the sprints, 3 miles is perfectly fine. If you're doing a super, I'd recommend maybe at least being able to run like 5 miles. And also, something you'll probably forget about is running hills, okay? Because a lot of these Spartan races are very up and down. I've done some that are quite literally going up to a mountain and down a mountain again. That's a lot of elevation gain, and if you're not used to running hills, even if you're a good flat runner, you will not be able to handle that race as well as you would expect just because it's so hilly. And also, I would recommend trying out your trail running specifically because Spartan races, unless you're doing a stadium, are trail races. So running outside in the woods is very different than running on concrete because you never have to worry about little roots and stuff where you can trip or roll an ankle. So going out there and just taking it nice and easy and getting used to being on trails and stuff is usually a good idea. The next thing are carries, and this is where I want to kind of show you some of the equipment I have. So there's a lot of obstacles out in Spartans, Most of these include the bucket carry, sandbag carry, which involves carrying a sandbag, carrying a heavy bucket full of gravel. There's an Atlas carry, which just gives you like a concrete boulder that you have to move from one place to another. But the big thing is these are all generally using the same muscles, which involve your hamstrings, which are the back of your legs here, and your lower back, which are going to help you carry, okay? So you want to work on exercises that help you with that. So if you don't want to get any equipment, you just want to go to a gym, the best thing that I would recommend are doing things like deadlifts, maybe power cleaning if you have some more weightlifting experience. Kettlebell swings are always really nice, and pretty much any other exercise that are going to work those general muscles. Also squats. I forgot those, but those are very important. Honestly, the best way to prepare for a race is being very specific about your training. Just to give you an idea, this is a bucket I made, right? I made it at Home Depot. I think you could probably see there's a Home Depot logo on it somewhere. Yeah, right there. But this is a $5 bucket and lid from Home Depot, and the gravel inside in total probably cost me less than 10 bucks. So like for 15 bucks, you can get a good bucket. The good thing about these buckets is if you fill them all the way to the top, you can get to like 100 pounds. So you can adjust the weight. It's pretty cheap. And because you're doing bucket carries on the race, training with a bucket is the most specific way to target those muscles that you want, okay? If you're gonna get one piece of equipment that you're gonna make yourself to train with, get yourself a bucket because it's so cheap, easy, and effective for training. For other things that you could get for home equipment, here's my sandbag that I got. This is actually a nicer sandbag. You can make these at Home Depot if you want to be kind of cheaper about it, but this is a nicer one. I think it was 45 bucks. I think I have it loaded to be like 80 pounds. But as you can see, it's pretty easy to throw over the shoulder. It's made of some pretty durable material, and it's super easy. Like sometimes I will just put this on and take the dog out for a walk, and that's just a good way to practice doing sandbag carries. Another piece of equipment, again, if you want to work on carries, I have it back here, is a weight vest. So this is a very easy thing to just put on and go for a hike in. And it's pretty easy to adjust the weight. I think I have it set for 20 pounds right now, but this weight vest can go all the way up to 40 pounds. So it's a good way just to add weight and get yourself used to moving, having some weight holding you down. And also pretty easy to buy are kettlebells at Walmart. Honestly, if you've never done kettlebell work before, you should buy yourself like a 20 or 25 pound one. Walmart, I've seen sells them all the way up to like 35 pounds. That's what this one is. But you should probably start somewhere around 20 or 25. It's a nice thing to have because if I can't make it to the gym that day, I can easily just take my kettlebell and move it to an empty part of the apartment or take it outside and get a good exercise in. The next thing are climbing based obstacles. So these are obstacles that involve you like coming off the ground and you having to get over things. The big ones that everyone is terrified of are obstacles like twister, monkey bars, multi-rig. So these are things where you're using only your arms to traverse from one area to the next. There are also a few other obstacles that allow you to use your feet. So some of the ones that come to mind are the inverted wall or the Z wall. And there's obviously a lot more that use a lot of the same muscles. But the main idea is they all involve climbing-like activities. And so the most important thing is to focus on these muscle groups. And these wind up being higher up on your back. You know, your lats, your traps, right? Your bicep muscles are pretty important here, forearms and grip strength. So these are all things that you want to be working on. There's a lot of different workouts, but honestly, if you have access to it, the best thing, the number one thing to do is to join a rock climbing / bouldering gym. It's very easy to get into like that, and they work all of the muscle groups. You know, the number one thing you're gonna notice when you're climbing a lot, or when you start climbing a lot, is your grip strength and using your back muscles. Your biceps will even hurt a little bit. So those are all the muscles that I was just talking about. The best thing you can do is join a climbing gym. The other thing about climbing, you also get the instinct of climbing, right? You learn how to use your core to stabilize yourself. You learn how to use your legs to add some extra support and take weight off your arms. And you learn how to handle your momentum and change your center of mass such that you're using it most optimally to move around. And these are all things that you can't really just watch a video and apply on the fly. You do have to practice with it. If you cannot join a climbing gym for whatever reason, then the next thing that you really have to do is just pull-ups. You have to start doing a lot of pull-ups if you cannot get access to a climbing gym, because that's the only thing that gets close to working the exact same muscles. Now, if you can't do a pull-up, then there are a bunch of options at a gym that will help you easily get into doing pull-ups. The big ones are you can do weighted pull-ups, which basically just have a lever for you to put your foot on, and those will help you support some of your weight so that you're not having to do a pull-up with your full body weight yet. And the next thing are doing lat pull downs, right? So it's pretty much the same motion as a pull down, but it's just with an adjustable weight. And I would recommend doing these until you can start doing pull-ups. After that, you should just start doing pull-ups entirely separately. So the next thing are wall obstacles. So these are some of the hurdles, the 4-foot wall, 6-foot wall, 8-foot wall, basically just different walls that are made for you to pull yourself up and get over them. The muscles that they use are pretty much the same as for the rock climbing muscles, except you use them to a much lesser extent. If you can do the rock climbing stuff, you can do the walls, right? So I would just worry about the climbing obstacles and the walls will come on their own. The next one is, in my opinion, the most dreaded obstacle in the Spartan races, which is the spear throw. So they'll give you a spear, they'll give you a target, and the thing is you get one throw and you have to land the spear in the target. So as you can imagine, this is incredibly skill-based, and unless you threw like javelin and track in high school or something like that, you probably don't have a lot of experience with throwing spears. The best thing you can probably do for yourself is make yourself a spear and practice at home. So I'm not gonna go too much into form and stuff like that. I plan on making a video later just about the spear throw. These are just some of the options I would recommend you making so you can practice it at home. So if you wanna go the cheapest route, which I have a friend who uses this and he seems to get fine results, is just using PVC pipe, okay? This is a 5-foot, 3/4 inch PVC pipe, and it was like $2 at Home Depot, and the cap right here was probably like 50 cents. So for $2.50, you can get yourself a practice spear. I have 3 of these just to go outside, and I'll throw them at like trees or something, because you can usually get a good distance from a tree and find one that's about the right width that you want to practice with. The standard distance for a spear throw is 25 feet. So if you're gonna go out and practice on something, try and make it 25 feet, because training specifically for that distance I think tends to be good. The one that I primarily use though are actually rake handles. So as you can see, this is a rake handle that I bought at Lowe's, pretty cheap. It has like a metal tip in there, and usually this is where like you would put in the rake head. So this one I think is a lot nicer. It's like $10 to get one of these, right? So you can get 4 PVC pipe ones for the price of one of these spears. But honestly, I think this is your best bet. So the big benefit of getting one of these rake handles is that you can get a much better sense for the weight and how to find like the center of mass and weight distribution. The PVC pipe, you may not learn how hard you really need to throw it at an actual Spartan because they're so light. That can be a pro if you're concerned about your arms getting tired working out these spears, but honestly, like if you want to build up some of the muscles that are involved in the throw, I think the rake handle's one of your best bet. A separate one that I have where I just tied rope, as you can see, I have a rope, I did a little slip knot right here, and now I can just throw it, right? And then without having to move, I can just pull it back. So it makes it really easy to practice. You really only need one spear, but I actually have 4 of the rake handles because I use them so much, and I like to have a few different ones, some with the rope, some without the rope. But those are the 2 primary practice ones. The key dip thing you may be noticing is neither of those have tips. You can add a tip. I do have a spear that has a tip on it, but I've wound up not using that one so much because, first of all, I don't have a target. I don't have a target that I would actually stick into. So the point of the tip winds up being a little moot, and it also makes it actually dangerous to have a tip in it. If you throw it and it goes off onto the side or something, like if my dog is around, I don't want to accidentally spear my dog. When practicing with a spear that does not have a tip would be just as good. It's not super important, but if you do have a target where a spear can stick and you do want to have that extra assurance to make sure you know how it feels to get it to stick into a target, then adding a tip is something you can do. Usually just by taking a 10-inch galvanized nail, throwing it in there, and using like some rubber cement or something to make sure it stays in place. Yeah, so the last obstacle that I really want to talk about, the type of obstacles, are the crawls, okay? There are bear crawls and barbed wire crawls that you'll kind of wind up doing on these races. If you've never done barbed wire crawling for a very long distance, you're actually surprised how tiring it can be on your first time doing it. So it may be a good idea to go out there and practice it. I usually practice my crawls on a field hockey field. I'll go out there and I'll just crawl the whole distance, and then I might crawl back a little bit later. Things like football fields is another good place to go try, because you can do like 1/3 of the field and that's 100 feet. So just stuff like that you may want to try. In general, these, you are not going to fail on a crawl. You can sit there in the dirt and take a rest. You're laying down if you really have to, but it can be a little tiring. So prepare for the crawls, but I don't think it's something that's gonna make you fail. And the last thing are practice your burpees, okay? When you're doing your first race, it's almost guaranteed that you will fail at least one obstacle. And if you're like most people, you're actually gonna fail several, okay? So of the people I was running with last week, one of them missed 6 obstacles throughout the whole race. So if you're keeping track, that's 180 burpees, because you do 30 burpees for every miss. It's generally a good idea to practice doing burpees. Those help you build cardiovascular endurance anyways while you're doing them. So they're gonna make you more fit by practicing them, and you're training specifically in case you fail. There's no downside to working burpees, except they're gonna kind of hurt a little bit, but they're gonna make you stronger. So I highly recommend throwing those into your race preparation. If you wanna actually be serious about having a good race and doing all of your burpees, prepare for them, and they won't seem so daunting on the day of. That's all the training stuff. Obviously, there's a lot more. I do have a training series on this channel where I show you my workouts, or at least most of them throughout the week, and how I'm trying to prepare, because I'm trying to qualify to go to the North American Regional Championships. If you have any more questions about training, feel free to ask me, or just move over to one of those videos and see how I like to do my general preparation. But I think if you give yourself a good medley of those, then you will for sure be prepared for handling your first Spartan race. In general, I think most people are in shape enough to at least finish a sprint. The last category that I want to kind of cover is what to do the night before your race. The number one thing is try and sleep well. In general, you're going to have to leave somewhat early in order to make it to your race venue on time. So it's good to go to bed early, get a good night's sleep. I think this is pretty obvious stuff. The next thing, and this is not obvious if you don't do a lot of aerobic sports, but carbo load. Eat something that has a lot of carbohydrates on it. This is your excuse to eat carbs and not feel bad about it. Generally, my favorite thing to have before a race is chicken Alfredo pasta, right? So it has some protein in it. It tastes good, but it's mostly I'm getting a lot of carbs in that pasta. Pretty much any pasta is a good idea. Eating spaghetti, lasagna, whatever you want, be creative with it, but those are some good ideas. If you want, you can have pizza. You're probably not supposed to, but I mean, pizza is a great source of carbs, and most people enjoy it, right? So you can usually just even enjoy yourself a pizza and say that you're actually preparing well for the race, right? It's your one excuse to eat pizza and feel good about it. So feel free, but make sure you get a bunch of carbs before the race of some sort, and also have them in the morning. The next thing, and you may not think about this, is stretch out a lot. You don't want to be hit with a random cramp while you're walking on the trail and have to force yourself and a lot of other people to slow down. It's gonna hurt, and in general, they're not enjoyable. So stretch out, make sure you feel loose, and you're much at lower risk for injury if you make sure you stretch out the night before and the morning of. And the last thing is make sure you get to the venue early. Spartan has notoriously terrible parking. It's probably one of the few big things to complain about, but you can just show up to a venue and spend a large time getting into parking and have to push yourself back to a later time. And in general, you want to arrive at the venue, give yourself enough time to eat and feel good, change clothes, put your bags away, and relax a little bit before the race. And that involves getting to the venue somewhat early, which involves making your way there and making your way through parking early, right? So plan to be at the venue at least, I would say, an hour and a half before your race. That may seem excessive, but usually once you've made your way through parking, this winds up being closer to like an hour before your race, and that tends to be enough time to get ready, make sure you go to the bathroom and stuff like that. Those are all my tips that I have for if you've never done a Spartan. I may think about later doing one of these videos and just showing like the whole pre-race process a little bit and running it with some of the audio, just how I talk people through some of the obstacles, people who are more fresh. But in general, I think these are the tips that are essential. So just going over, again, the basics real quick. As far as the mandatory things, the number one tips that I recommend for preparing for a Spartan across all the categories are: first, get some good shoes. Get yourself some compression shorts. In your training, make sure you're running. Try and join a rock climbing gym. And if you can't do anything else, buy yourself a bucket at Home Depot and fill it with sand. If you do those 3 things, you'll probably have most of the muscle groups hit for preparing for a Spartan race. Eat well, sleep well, stretch, and be there on time. All right? If you do all that stuff, then you don't have to worry about your first Spartan. You're gonna breeze through it, and next thing you know, you're gonna be doing a super or a beast. So thank you guys for watching. Hopefully, I've covered everything. If there are any particular questions you have, I may try answering them or making a completely separate video to go into more detail about certain parts of these obstacles and how to handle them, or certain bits of gear. But yeah, so I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys later.